This conference will now be recorded.
All right, any questions, guys? Firstly, any questions that I can take before we can get started? Anyone, any questions out here? Anyone, anything till here? Okay,
Hi, Kiran.
good, please.
Can you tell me geodetic traffic? Last
Can you tell
class you
me
told me that.
last class
Yeah,
I told you to try out Geographic Traffic Manager.
yeah.
Did you try out
I
Geo?
tried it.
Huh?
I tried it,
Okay.
but can you tell me outline of that?
Can you tell me outline of it? What exactly is Geographic? Okay. Firstly, before I tell you that, what do you understand by that Geographic Traffic Manager out here?
Geodetic traffic. If servers with we have two servers in South Asia and US two, East US two.
Okay.
In geographic traffic do diverts the South Asian customers to South Asia server and
Correct.
East West
Hmm.
East West customers to East West to server.
Correct.
Correct?
That is geographic. That's correct. Which means that customers coming from a particular region will only go to a particular region's application out here. Will only go to something called as a particular region application out here. And when you are doing a geographic traffic manager, firstly, delete your endpoints. Delete all the endpoints. Configure the traffic manager in geographic. Then re-add your endpoints. When you're re-adding, let's say endpoint 1, it is going to ask you which region is this particular endpoint for. Is it United States? If it's United States, what is the country in United States that you want to go in, or what's the state in the United States that you want to go in, let's say, want this endpoint for? You can do endpoint 2, endpoint 3, and so forth. When you're configuring, very importantly, when you're configuring a geographic, first delete your endpoints, then re-add it. When you're re-adding it, tell what is the geo mapping that you have. Once you tell what is the geo mapping that you have, the traffic manager will be configured accordingly, and then your traffic will be diverted accordingly to that particular endpoints out there. So
Why they use a two traffic manager in Geo? Why we have to use two traffic managers?
you don't have to use two traffic managers in geographic. There is no point of, or there is no way, or there is no need for using two traffic managers. Why would you like to use two traffic managers out here? You don't have to. You don't really have to. If you are routing the traffic in a geographic routing methodology, you don't really have to use two traffic managers. You just need to have multiple
In
endpoints,
diagram they represented two traffic managers. No, that's why I
which
want.
is because they are not telling this is geographic. There is this is telling there's something called as what? Nested profile. It's a
Okay.
nesting. They're telling you can optionally do it. You can optionally put one more traffic manager inside it. I don't have any issue, but you don't really have to. You can put multiple
Okay.
endpoints and you can divert
Okay.
your traffic into multiple endpoints as such.
Okay. Thank you, Kiran.
Yes. Any more questions out here? Anyone? Any more questions out here? Okay, let me see the chat window before we get started. Okay, great. Fine. So let's get started with DevOps today then. This is what we wanted to start. And we, I would say, completed most of the administration part. We still have pieces of administration part that is pending, which will be covered as a part of DevOps, which will be, let's say, taken as a part of DevOps. And there's one demo basically that we are lagging with, which is the application insights. That is something that I have to cover. So I'll plan a weekend and we'll cover application insights in that particular weekend, either this weekend or the coming weekend. I'll go ahead and do that. But again, before I start with DevOps, what do you all understand by DevOps out here? Before you go ahead and let's say start actually with this, why do you think you need DevOps? Why do you really think that you need something known as DevOps practice or something like that? Or what is your understanding by this terminology? Development plus operations. Okay, but what does that really mean? Sorry. Okay, recycling process. Okay, okay, I can take that. Okay, anything else? Methodology of automating SDLC. When you say SDLC, what exactly do you mean by SDLC? Software development. Okay, software development life cycle. When you say life cycle, what do you exactly mean by life cycle? Hmm. To the deployment of the code, which involves, yes, you're right, from the scratch of the code to the deployment of the code, which involves development, testing, operations, and then finally release process. All these together is called as SDLC, Software Development Life Cycle. SDLC out here in very short. So we normally tell, okay, fine, this is how SDLC works and all that stuff. But let's do one thing. Let's put DevOps aside for now. Let's understand how normally an SDLC, let's say, begins, or an SDLC kind of starts out. Software development lifecycle. How does this really progress? What happens in an SDLC and all that stuff? This is something that we'll understand firstly, and then we'll understand why do you need DevOps and where do you actually get DevOps out here and all that stuff. So let's do this. Let's start with you. You're a client, okay? You have an idea. You have an idea to develop an application called Android. People use this in their phones. It's a mobile platform. It's a mobile operating system and etc. So what do you do is, like, let's imagine for now that Android is not owned by Google. It's just a software. You have an idea telling that, okay, fine, I want to develop Android so that I can install this in say mobile phones and all that stuff, so that users can start using this and all these things. And you just begin this journey. So we'll call this as Android version 1. Okay. So what you do is that, again, you're not a technical person. You just have an idea. You want to implement this out. So what you do is that you go to companies, different software companies. We normally call this as, like, just a very simple word. You have a tender. You put a tender in a paper telling that, what, I have this idea. Can someone go ahead and, let's say, develop this out? So there will be multiple software companies that will be coming and attending this particular tender out here to sign a contract with you. To sign a contract with you, telling that, okay, fine, I will develop this software for you. In return, you'll have to pay some money. That's how normally the industry kind of works. Any industry, that's how normally it works. So let's say this is the sales team of your organization. They normally come into the auction. They say, okay, fine, you know what, this is the quotation that we can give you uh, to understand what your product is and etc. And apart from this, you'll also have a technical person. Let's say we call this particular technical person as a project lead or a project manager, someone like that, who understands the technicality of an application, who understands what are the challenges to develop an application, what do you need to develop an application, and all these things. So these two people are here, and they now start asking questions to this particular client, telling that, okay, fine, where do you want to deploy your application? Is it throughout the world? Is it only in India? If it's throughout the world, the cost will of course be high. If it's only in India, yes, the cost will be a little bit less and all that stuff. Then they'll be asking questions like, what is the appearance of your application, UI, user interface? So that, because I need to tell my developer how to develop it, right? And also, what are the intended audience? Meaning, is it every phone, or is it only Android phones, or is it only one company phone and all that stuff? This phase, initial phase, is called as requirement capturing. Called requirement capturing, where you as a project lead and you as a company start interacting with the client and understanding what is their requirement, what specifically is their requirement, and etc. And then once you understand the requirement, you will be telling the client that, you know what, give me around 10 months to develop the entire software for you. I'll take like around 10 months out here to develop the entire piece of software and give it to you. So the client, so the let's say your client, which is Android, They say, okay, fine, great, not a problem. I'll give you the money, give it to in 10 months and all that stuff. Fine, let's remove the sales guy. Let's only put the project lead into picture right now. Sales is done. You signed a contract with that particular company. Project lead is there. The very first thing that I need to do in order to develop this piece of software is I need a developer. I need a team of developers. I would not say one simple developer. I need a team of developers to, let's say, begin with. So I go ahead. I either hire a team of developers or I recruit these particular team of developers from in my internal organization. There'll be a few employees who are in bench. I can take them into the project. Or if I don't have anyone, I will start hiring them from outside, telling that, okay, fine, this is my project. This is the skill set that I need. This is the job description. I'll start hiring my development team. Development team. I'll say development. These developers, when you hire them, they need laptops to start working with or computers to start working with. Let's say that the project that you're working for is a Java based project, and the developers are telling that, what, since for this particular project out here, we need laptops that are running out of, let's say, Linux operating system, because that's the best operating system to develop and all that stuff. So we need Linux. So yeah, great, not a problem. I'll give you laptops also. That's the reason whenever you change a project, right, your client will give you a laptop telling you, okay, fine, this is your laptop, this is the requirement that you asked for. I'm giving you this particular laptop. So each and every developer will have his or her own laptop. And what I'm trying to highlight out here is that this is a Linux operating system. The Linux that you hired and all that stuff. Great. Developers started working. They are now writing their code, testing their code, doing a lot of things out here. Now, I, as a project lead, also need to establish one particular factor or one particular point that you as a developer are developing. Fine, you're doing your job, great. But there should be someone else who's testing the quality of what you're developing. That's where a team called QA comes into picture. Quality analysis. Any company, you go with non-IT companies also, you have something like QAs who will test the quality of what you produced. So let's get in QAs. So let's say that there are a few QAs that are working in your organization, and due to space restriction, I'm just depicting one person. This can be an entire team. This can be multiple teams out here. So I now have a QA. Even this QA needs a this QA needs a laptop, his own laptop or a virtual machine, whatever it is. Let's say that QAs are now telling that, what, for my softwares like Selenium and all these things, they best work on Windows. These softwares are best working on Windows, so I will go for, or I need a laptop with a Windows operating system installed on top of it. So I would say this is QA with an operating system called Windows. Fine, this is the second thing that is happening. And finally, you will need one more team called operations. What operations does is very simple. After you have developed it, after you have tested it, operations team also comes into picture, tests it out, and gives the software to your client. So operations team is in place to make sure not only to give the let's say software to the client, but also to support the client after they give it. So operations team is something who stays in a constant touch with your client out here. So I'll get in one more team, Devops. So they see what is the quality of your software. Again, for them also you need laptops. Let's say this particular team is asking machines with Mac OS installed on top of it. Macintosh, Apple laptops. I'll say Mac. Once they test it, they finally go ahead and give that software to the client, the same client that you saw earlier, who's now at the receiving end. They'll give the software to the client. When I say give the software, this is a release process. meaning they can give the software in the form of a raw software, or they can deploy it on an Azure cloud or an AWS cloud or a server and give it to him, and also maintain that particular piece of software for them. So these three teams are now very crucial for me for firstly development, testing, and release. Three things out here, which constitutes my software development lifecycle, which is development, testing, release process. Three things together put will become my SDLC, software development lifecycle, and how my software is getting developed and all that stuff. Let's see. The challenge here is this. I, as a project lead, usually project leads are someone who's very top on the chain. So usually what they do is that they have multiple projects under them. So I, as a project lead, for this requirement capturing phase, requirement capturing is not a small thing. It's actually a very big thing. You'll have to understand the client. You'll have to sit with the client, talk to him a lot of times. Let's say the time that I'm taking here is 1 month. The time for requirement capturing is around 1 month out here. So let's even write that down in Notepad to understand what are all the complexities that we're facing out here. So I'll say REQ capturing. I'll just say requirement capturing is, let's say, 1 month. After that, again, I'm just giving you very broad numbers. These are not the actual numbers, very broad numbers. Just an example out here. After that, I need to hire a development team, keep a development team ready. So I will say hiring or recruiting my team to build the software. Let's give it a month. Recruiting, setting up their systems, a lot of things out here. A month out here. Graceful period, 1 month. I now have how many? 8 months remaining in my SDLC. In the 8 months, I'll have to develop, test, and also release the code to my client out here. Great, not a problem. Let's see this. Now, the development team is coming into picture. They have now started developing your code. They now said, okay, fine, I'm developing your code. Let's start and do a lot of development and etc. And then say your development team is taking around 2 months of time to give you the initial piece of code. This is the initial piece of code because they've just formed. They need to understand, they need to plan, they need to do a lot of things out here. Let's say they took around 2 months. So 2 plus 1, 3 plus 1, 4. You have more, 6 months of time. And after that initial, let's say 2 months out here, after the development team has developed this out, they will now say, okay, fine, this code needs to be tested, and they send it across to the tester. The very first issue out here is that my development teams and testing teams are not working together in sync. After my development team is developing the code, only then the code is being given to the tester, which means this tester is idle for 2 months. This tester is literally not doing anything for the next 2 months. He's just, let's say, doing his R&D and all that stuff, not doing anything. Okay with me till here. The other issue is that the developers are developing the piece of software on an operating system called what? Linux. The tester is testing the same software on his laptop, which is running on what? Windows. There is, of course, going to be issues with configuration. Softwares that run on Linux or that are developed in Linux. So this is developed in Linux. They take a flavor of Linux. They take a lot of properties from that underlying operating system out here. The software that you develop is heavily influenced by the operating system that you develop, because when you write a software, right, it will depend upon the operating system, what kind of framework you're developing and all that stuff. All these things might not be supported on the QA's laptop. The QA will simply say, you know what, the software is not running, I'm very sorry, redevelop this. Now they'll again come to the QA team, understand what happened with this one, like what exactly you see. Then the QA will tell, you know what, I'm using a Windows system, you developed in a Linux system and all that stuff. Now the developer will have to add additional support to the code so that it will also run on Windows laptops as well. Multiple things out. So let's say the initial QA testing took around a month. Let's say initial QA testing. around, let's say, somewhere around a month. After a month, the QA identified a lot of bugs or issues, you can say that, issues in your code. He's coming back to the development team and is telling, you know what, this code is not really working on my laptop. There are a lot of issues that I see. You'll have to fix that. Let's say the development team again. Let's say the development team here again. Let's put this out. Okay, something that came into picture. Fine, not sure why this came into picture, but yes. Let's say the development team here is taking again a month to identify the issues, identify everything that is there in the code and fix it out. Because they need that time to fix this out. They again come back to the testing team. Now, testing team, let's say, will take around 15 days. Say, okay, fine, you know what, the code is developed. Now let's identify this again. This was the first iteration. This was the first cycle. Let's say first cycle or first iteration. This is the second iteration that you have. So you have a first iteration, and in the second iteration, not sure why this isn't going fine. In the second iteration, you're taking one more month and 15 days out here to develop this test itself and so on and so forth. You can also have a third iteration. If there are multiple issues, you can also have a third iteration, fourth iteration, depends. So let's see. 1 plus 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, almost 6.5 months is done. You have 3.5 months that is left for your code that you promised there. These are 3.5 months basically of time that you need to, let's say, have right now. So I'll say, okay, fine, not a problem. And again, this 3.5 months can also reduce depending upon the number of iterations that you do, depending upon the amount of issues that you have and etc. 3.5 months can actually reduce. You might have more less period, let's say 2 months or something like that. With that period, I move forward and I give the code. I move forward right now and I give the code to my operations. I'm now moving forward and giving the code to the operations out here. And now operations tells, okay, fine, hold on. I won't give the code to the client yet. I have my own test cases. I have my own criteria to test. Let me use my own criteria to test this. Again, code was developed on a Linux machine, tested on a Windows machine, and running on a Mac machine. You will again face configuration issues. Again, in order to resolve this configuration, I cannot tell my developer, hey, you know what, don't use Linux, use Windows. I cannot tell my QA, okay, fine, you're good. I cannot tell my operations coming and telling that you don't use, let's say, Mac, you use Windows only, so that I can test it out and all that stuff. I cannot really do that because each and every team has their own individual demand. I cannot really, let's say, change the way my organization works. I need to improve my software so that it will run on all the three platforms out here. Now, when now the operations team is telling, okay, fine, you know what, I see an issue. The operations team is telling, you know what, this is a major issue out here. It's not running on my machine. It will again come back to the development team and telling and it'll tell the development team that, you know what, you have issues, please fix it. This is the third iteration, wherein the operations is taking around 15 days to identify all these things. 7 months is done. Coming back to the development team is telling, you know what, your code is not really working. Development team now starts working on this one. 1 month, go ahead and let's say resolve this issue. Again, after the development team is testing it out, it's sending to QA to check this out. And if everything goes well, let's say take around 7 days, test this out, go again back to the operations. Again, operations test this, checks everything is fine and all that stuff. In between, what is happening is that this deadline is getting over. It's getting over and over and over. And there'll be one day, final day, when I'm doing all a lot of iterations and I'm done with 10 months. I'll again go to my client and ask for an extension, telling that, you know what, I need 1 more month or I need 2 more months and all these things. There are a lot of issues that I need to address here. One, the coordination between teams is not that great because teams are working in an individual, let's say, silos. The development is working in their own environment, testing is working in their own world, operations is working in their own world. No one knows what the other team is actually doing. That's the first issue that I need to address. Second issue is the configuration out here. Development team is developing, let's say, on one platform, testing team is doing something out here, and so on and so forth. What we do is that, or what we call is that, this is a waterfall model of development. It's a waterfall model of software development out here, wherein the flow only happens from top to bottom. Teams are not in sync with each other. Teams have an issue with, let's say, each other out here. What I do is that I slightly improvise this model, and let's say that this is the agile model of software development out here, wherein project lead remains the same, but between the project lead and your development teams and your testing teams as such, there will be one more person coming into picture called as a scrum master. I'll say scrum master. The scrum master out here will act as a bridge between your project lead, who's directly working with the client, who's directly in touch with the client, and the development teams. And the development team out here. Now, it's not 10 months right now, it's 2 months. And the promise here is that in 2 months, I won't give you the full software. I won't give you the entire software. If I give you the entire software, it'll take some time. Tell me what are all the essential features of your software. The basic features, the essential features. Tell me that. I'll deliver those basic and essential features first. Let's try it out. Let's see how it works out. Let's see if people are using it. And then we'll go ahead and develop the rest of the features out here and etc. So let's say the client is telling that, you know what, the basic features are SMS, calling, cameras. All these things are my basic features. This should be there in my operating system. Later things can come, like, you know what, if you swipe, the camera will open. If you do something, the torch will open and all that stuff. That can come later. The swipe gestures and all that and things, they can come later, not a problem. But I now need to develop my essential piece of software, which I am telling it will take 2 months. And I'm now telling to the Scrum Master that, you know what, these are the features, which is camera, which is calling and all that stuff. Each and everything is a feature. What this Scrum Master does is, on a daily basis, he connects with this team. Every day he connects with this team, asks the team that, you know what, where are you? What are you doing today? What did you do today? What will you do tomorrow? What are the issues that we are facing today, and all these things out. So we now have a daily call. We call this as a daily stand-up call or a daily Scrum call out here, which wherein we analyze what did we do today, what is the progress today, what is, let's say,